Oh, what a whirlwind of a morning it was. Jason raced through the crowded terminal, his heart pounding with urgency. Why the rush? Because he had a promise to keep, to his little boy, Aiden, waiting anxiously back home. But then, can you believe it, he spotted an old man, lost and limping, struggling through the chaos. What would you do? Stop or keep running? Jason faced that very choice, and oh, how his heart tugged. He chose to stop. Little did he know, that single act of kindness would spark a miracle, a plane waiting just for him, defying all odds. This is the story of how one quiet decision carried a man all the way home. Because, don't you see, sometimes the best journeys begin when you dare to be kind. Welcome to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, where tales of compassion and goodness light up our lives. Ready to dive into what really happened? Here we go. Picture this, the morning air at Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport hit Jason like a wave, ugh, that sharp tang of burnt coffee mixed with jet fuel. It was early October, and the sun was just waking up over the desert city, splashing the sky with streaks of amber and dusty rose. What a breathtaking sight! The terminal buzzed with restless energy, travelers darting to their gates, pilots in crisp uniforms slicing through the crowd, and oh, that relentless drone of intercom announcements. Gate changes, delays, final boarding calls, it was a symphony of controlled chaos, and Jason was right in the thick of it. Jason Miller moved with fierce determination, his boots scuffing the shiny floor as he dodged families juggling strollers and tourists hauling overstuffed bags. At 38, he had the rugged, solid build of a man who'd spent years wrestling flames and carrying the weight of others' lives. No uniform today, though, just jeans and a plain navy jacket. But couldn't you tell? His posture screamed firefighter, alert, steady, always a heartbeat ahead of the rush. His son's voice echoed in his mind from the night before, "Promise me you'll be there, Dad." Oh, that tremble in Aiden's words, part pride, part fear. At just 10 years old, Aiden was about to step onto a stage, named most valuable player by his team. To Jason, it wasn't just a ribbon, it was everything. A moment for his boy to shine, to feel seen. "I'll be there," Jason had vowed, crouching to meet Aiden's wide, hopeful eyes. "I promise." That promise burned in his chest now, propelling him past the espresso bar with its grumpy line of caffeine-starved travelers, past the quirky little boutique peddling cactus-themed postcards. He could already see it, Aiden's grin lighting up that gymnasium, the metal gleaming against his small chest. With a quick heft of his duffel bag, Jason picked up speed. Then, bam, he saw him. At first, just a shadow near the departure screens, shifting awkwardly. As Jason closed in, the figure sharpened into an older man, maybe in his 70s, white hair poking out from a faded military cap. That cap. It was weathered and worn, like the man beneath it. The patch on the side was frayed, but Jason's sharp eyes caught it, a Vietnam service emblem, its colors softened by years of sun and storms. The old man clutched a crumpled airline ticket, turning it over and over in his hands, his brow creased with confusion. At his feet sat a battered leather suitcase, oh, the stories it must hold. Its brass buckles were dulled, a relic of another time. Jason kept moving, his flight, his promise, urging him on. But as he passed, those pale blue eyes locked onto his, watery, lost, flickering with a frustration that hit Jason square in the gut. Hadn't he seen that look before? A man who'd always known his way until life threw him a curveball. He slowed, his breath catching. "Come on, Jason, you're running late," his mind shouted. But then, oh, that quieter voice. The one that roared in the moments that mattered, "Don't leave him. Not like this." Could he ignore it? Jason inhaled deeply, calculating. He had a sliver of time, maybe just enough. With a resolute pivot, he turned back. "Sir," he said, his voice calm but firm, "you need a hand?" The old man jolted, then, wow, relief flooded his face like dawn breaking over the horizon. "Oh, thank you, son. I'm all turned around." These gates, they shuffle them every which way, don't they? Jason cracked a warm smile. They sure do. Where are you headed? The man fumbled with the ticket, his hands trembling slightly, those hands that had weathered too many cold seasons. Gate C-22, he muttered. I thought it was here, but I've been wandering, lost as can be, I reckon. Jason gently took the paper, memories of his own father's shaky grip flashing through his mind. He scanned it fast. Flight to Washington, D.C., you've got time, he assured, handing it back. C-22's that way, past security, down a long hall to the left. Quite a trek, though. The man nodded, shifting his bag with a wince. That's when Jason saw it, the limp, a slow favoring of his right leg. An old wound, perhaps. His throat tightened. I'm Jason, he said softly, offering a lifeline. Walter, the man replied, extending a hand. Their grip was solid, Walter's strength lingering despite the years. Walter Harris. Good to meet you. Walter, Jason said, decisive, let's get you to your gate. Walter balked. I don't want to hold you up. You've got places to be, I can see it in your rush. Jason paused, Aiden's face flickering in his mind. Then he studied Walter, shoulders squared with pride, even as his gaze flitted nervously around the terminal. Couldn't you picture him, decades ago, standing tall in some far-off jungle? Don't worry about me, Jason murmured. We'll get you there. They set off, Jason syncing with Walter's careful stride. The hallway teemed with life, suitcases clacking, kids giggling atop shoulders, a couple bickering over directions. Jason steered Walter to the side, letting the older man's hand rest lightly on his arm for balance. Walter stayed quiet at first, his breaths a bit ragged. Jason didn't push, those minutes ticked by, but he held steady. After a few steps, Walter spoke. You're a kind soul, Jason. Most folks these days. Too busy with their own worlds. Jason shrugged, a grin tugging at his lips. I'm a firefighter, we're built to jump in where we're needed. Walter's eyes twinkled with a small, grateful smile. A firefighter? Should have known. You've got that look, always watching, keeping things safe. Jason chuckled. Guess it's hard to shake. Walter slowed, and Jason paused with him. The older man drew a deep breath. I don't usually ask for help, you know. Always figured if I can stand, I'll manage. Jason nodded, feeling the weight of that pride. We all need a boost sometimes, right? Walter's gaze sparkled under his cap. You're darn right. They pressed on, Walter's hand hovering near Jason's arm, too proud to lean fully, yet too weary to let go. They hit a moving walkway, and Jason guided him on with care. Walter marveled at the flood of people zipping by. Didn't it feel like a river of lives crossing paths? I fought in Vietnam, he said suddenly, voice soft. Feels like a lifetime ago. Jason's chest ached. My granddad was there, too. Never said much, but he always seemed, split between here and there. Walter nodded, slow and knowing. That's it exactly. Part of you stays behind. The walkway tapered off, and Jason stepped down first, steadying Walter. The sea gates loomed closer now. They paused, Walter catching his breath. Jason peeked at his phone, missed calls from Mark, his buddy probably en route to Aiden's game. Am I slowing you down? Walter asked, concern creasing his face. Jason met his eyes, pocketing the phone. Not at all, he said firmly. We're getting you there. Walter studied him, then dipped his head in quiet thanks. They veered into a calmer corridor, a janitor hummed, a flight attendant flashed a smile, kids played cards on the floor. Jason navigated Walter past them. So close now. At C-22, the gate agent was rallying passengers. Jason exhaled, could he still make it if he bolted? But he lingered. Walter eased his bag down with a grunt, and Jason swooped in, lifting the weathered leather. It smelled of cedar and thyme, oh, the history it carried. "I can't thank you enough, son," Walter said, voice thick with gratitude. Jason smiled, warm and sure. "No trouble at all." And right then, he meant it, more than flights or schedules. Helping Walter. That was everything. He gripped the suitcase, ready to see him off before sprinting back, if time allowed. As they neared the gate, Jason caught Walter's wince with each step, his left leg stiff, his walk uneven. "You okay?" Jason asked, gentle but firm. Walter waved it off. "Just arthritis, an old war souvenir, that's all." Jason didn't push, but he saw the pain flicker in Walter's eyes, the grit in his clenched jaw. They stepped into a sunlit hall, planes glinting outside. Walter spoke again. "I'm off to Washington, a reunion, not family." He paused. "My old unit. We meet every few years while we can. Some guys, they're too old now, too frail. This might be our last." His voice wavered, and Jason felt it, the heaviness of endings. "I almost didn't make it this year," Walter whispered. "But I promised them, and a promise is everything," Jason finished, their shared understanding sealing the moment. Walter's faint smile said it all. Oh, the airport was buzzing with life. Jason and Walter pushed forward, threading their way through a swelling sea of travelers, suitcases rolling, voices chattering, everyone in a frantic rush. The loudspeaker snapped to life again, blaring out another final boarding call for Atlanta. Jason's chest squeezed tight. Oh no, was time really running out that fast? Every second felt like a drumbeat in his ears, urging him to hurry, hurry, hurry. But then he glanced at Walter, and his heart softened. Can you believe it? Amid all that chaos, there was this old man, standing tall despite a leg that wavered with every step. Determination glowed in his eyes, a quiet strength that seemed to whisper, "I've carried heavier loads than this." His grip on that battered suitcase was fierce, knuckles whitening against the faded leather. How could Jason abandon him now? They hit a crossroads, literally. A sign loomed above, splitting their path, C gates to the right, D gates to the left. Which way? Jason froze, squinting at the arrows, his mind racing. He spotted a young airline worker nearby, sleek ponytail swinging, tablet glowing in her hands, and waved her over with a desperate little jolt. "Excuse me," he called, his voice steady but edged with urgency. "We're trying to find C-22. This sign says right, but the board back there said left. What's the real story?" She blinked up from her screen, startled. "Oh, C-22. They've shifted it to D-16, some maintenance hiccup. You'll need to double back, head down the escalator, and swing around the corner." Walter let out a slow, weary breath, and Jason's stomach dropped. Another twist in this crazy maze? He flashed a shaky smile anyway. "Thanks," he said, though she'd already buried her nose back in her tablet, totally blind to the storm brewing in his day. Back they went, retracing their steps through the terminal's chaos. Jason shifted his duffel bag, its weight digging into his shoulder like a nagging reminder of every ticking second. Walter's limp grew heavier, his face paling under the strain. Poor guy. Jason slowed down, matching the old man's pace. No way was he letting Walter push himself too hard, not on his watch. To lighten the mood, Jason started talking, his words spilling out almost like a lifeline. "My grandfather fought in Korea," he said softly, his voice barely rising above the din. He didn't talk about it much, but he kept this medal tucked away in his nightstand. "My dad said he'd pull it out sometimes, just staring at it when he thought no one saw." Can you picture that, those quiet, heavy moments of memory? Walter's eyes sparked with something deep, a flicker of understanding. "That's how it goes," he murmured, his voice low and rich. "Some things, they're ours alone, locked up tight for those who live them. But sharing a piece now and then? That's how we keep them alive, isn't it? Jason nodded, feeling a lump rise in his throat. Yeah, I think about that all the time, what it costs to hold those stories in. Walter's lips curved into a small, tight smile. Good for you, Jason. Most folks don't even bother. They reached the escalator, and Jason hopped on first, turning to steady Walter as the metal steps hummed beneath them. The old man clutched the rail, his jaw set, no complaints, just grit. Down they went, the terminal's roar swirling around them, voices meshing into a hum, suitcase wheels clattering against tile like a restless rhythm. At the bottom, they swung around the corner, and there it was, a digital sign flashing D16, boarding soon. Jason's heart leapt. Finally, a win. But just as they closed in, a guy in a blazing orange vest stepped up. Sorry, folks, he barked, all business. Gates changed again, D16's now D10, crew switch. Jason's shoulders slumped. Another curveball. How much more could they take? He looked at Walter, who shut his eyes for a heartbeat, steadying himself. Then those eyes snapped open, and wow, there it was, that fire, that resolve, still burning bright after all these years. Come on, Walter said, quiet but firm. We'll get there. Jason managed a nod, his voice catching. Yeah, we will, he said, even as time slipped through their fingers like sand. On they went, each step a careful dance, Walter's gait cautious, Jason's hand hovering near his shoulder. They passed a frazzled mom scolding her kid, too dazzled by the moving walkway to listen, and a slick-suited businessman who breezed by without a glance. But Jason didn't care about them. He stuck by Walter, guiding him through the terminal's twists like a lifeline. Ever been to DC before? Jason asked, hoping to ease Walter's mind off that aching leg. The old man's eyes crinkled, a spark of memory lighting them up. A few times, he said, his tone warming. Mostly way back when I was young. Last time? Oh, about 20 years ago. My buddy got a medal from the president, and I stood right there with him. He said it meant everything to have someone who'd been in the thick of it by his side. Jason's chest swelled with warmth. I bet it did, how could it not? Walter nodded, his breath catching just a bit. You don't forget who stands with you. That's the real honor, you know, the truest medal there is. Jason swallowed hard, his thoughts drifting to Aiden, his little boy, eyes shining, waiting for Dad to cheer him on. That moment would be its own kind of medal, wouldn't it? They hit D10 just in time, the boarding line already snaking forward. Jason nearly sagged with relief, for Walter, at least. He led the old man to a window seat, easing that worn suitcase down with care. Walter sank into the chair with a soft groan, pale but steady, and then looked up with a tired, grateful smile. You didn't have to do all this, Walter said, his voice hushed. I know you're racing the clock too. Jason grinned, soft and real. I promised my son I'd be there today. But you know what? Sometimes promises aren't just for the ones we make them to, they're bigger than that. Walter studied him, then reached out, his hand clasping Jason's with surprising strength, warm despite a faint tremble. You're a good man, Jason, he said, quiet but sure. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Jason's throat tightened, oh, that hit deep. Thank you, sir, he whispered, blinking back the sting in his eyes. The boarding call crackled overhead, sharp and insistent. Jason glanced at the gate, then back at Walter. I'm staying till you're on that plane, he promised, and Walter's eyes glowed with quiet thanks. Thank you, he murmured, barely audible over the crowd. The line moved, and Jason stood by Walter, watching time slip away. His own flight. Long gone, but regret? Not a shred. When the crowd thinned, a flight attendant approached, her smile kind and bright. Sir, we're ready for you, she said. Walter rose, leaning on Jason, reaching for his suitcase with a grunt. I've got it, Jason said quick, snagging it before Walter could argue. Together, they shuffled past the last passengers, Jason steadying him at the jet bridge's edge. The attendant offered her arm, but Walter shook his head. Jason's support was all he'd take. At the doorway, Walter paused, his gaze locking with Jason's. "Thank you," he breathed, "for not walking away." Jason's voice broke, rough with feeling. "Thank you, for everything you've done, for all of us." Walter's eyes shimmered, then he turned, stepping through with his head high, suitcase bouncing lightly. The door shut, and Jason stood there, the morning's weight sinking in. His flight was history, but he didn't care, not one bit. He turned, breathing deep. Another flight would come, but for now, he soaked in the quiet after Walter's departure. He hadn't saved the world, hadn't doused a blaze, but he'd stood by someone who needed him. And that? That felt like everything. The gate emptied out, the last stragglers vanishing through the door. Walter was gone, off to face a past Jason could only guess at. He lingered, duffel bag in hand, the rush fading into a quiet ache. The terminal stretched out emptier now, travelers blurring past as he wrestled his thoughts. He'd done right by Walter, hadn't he? But Aiden, oh, his boy, waiting in that gym, searching the crowd. That promise was shattered now. Jason found a row of seats by the big windows, the desert sun blazing outside. He dropped into one, heavy, leaning forward, hands raking through his hair. He could see Aiden, sweaty hair, bright eyes, waiting for his name. How do you explain to a kid that sometimes one promise breaks another? He'd call soon, but the words felt tangled already. A soft voice cut through. "Mind if I sit?" A man eased into the seat beside him, early 40s, sharp suit, silver wing pin glinting on his lapel. "Go ahead," Jason said, though the guy was already settled. They watched a plane roll out in silence, then the man turned. "I'm Thomas, Thomas Harris." Jason blinked. "Wait, that name. I don't think we've met," he said, puzzled. Thomas smiled. "No, but you met my father this morning, Walter Harris." Jason bolted upright. "Walter? Your dad?" Thomas nodded, chuckling. "Yep, and he didn't mention me, did he? Typical dad." Jason exhaled, grinning. "He didn't need to, he's a hell of a guy." Thomas's eyes searched his. "He is, proudest man I know. Never asked me for a thing, not help, not a ride, nothing. But today. He called me, right after you got him to the gate. Told me how you stopped, how you didn't have to but did." Jason squirmed, brushing it off. "It wasn't much, anyone would've." "No," Thomas said, soft but firm. "Not anyone. Dad's been invisible too long, folks see the cap, the limp, and turn away. But you stayed." Imagine Jason sitting there, a flush rising on his cheeks. He could feel the heat of humility and pride all at once, mixing in his chest like a storm waiting to break. It was just the right thing to do," he stammered, his voice trembling, unsure how to express the overwhelming feeling inside him. Thomas leaned in slightly, tilting his head with a thoughtful expression, his eyes narrowing as if he was seeing straight through Jason, straight into his soul. What was Thomas thinking right now? What did he see? Then, with almost reverent grace, Thomas reached into the inner pocket of his sharp suit and pulled out a phone, slim, sleek, almost gleaming under the airport lights. His fingers moved across the screen with quiet precision, his touch deliberate. After a moment, he raised his gaze back to Jason. "My father once told me, Thomas, I've spent my life standing on my own 2 feet. I've never asked you for anything because I wanted to prove I could make it without help." Thomas's voice softened as he spoke, a subtle tremor breaking through his usually composed tone. It was the first time Jason had ever heard such vulnerability in him. "But today," he said, "I want you to help that young man, not because he asked, but because he did something right when it mattered most." Jason's heart lurched. He couldn't process the weight of those words. Walter, a man who lived by the creed of self-reliance, moved to tears by something as simple as an act of kindness. Jason's mind reeled. He pictured Walter, his quiet dignity, the way he'd always held himself as if asking for help was a weakness. And now this? It felt like everything was shifting around him. How could something so small matter so much? Thomas slipped the phone back into his pocket smoothly, as if nothing extraordinary had happened, but Jason was drowning in what he had just heard. He said, "Kindness deserves to be seen. It deserves to be answered," Thomas continued, his voice now resolute, his eyes unwavering. Jason's mind replayed those words, sinking deep into his chest, where they expanded into something heavy and profound. Jason swallowed hard, his throat tight, and murmured, "I didn't do it to be seen." His voice faltered, raw honesty lacing his words. He had acted out of instinct, out of pure necessity, not for the attention, not for recognition, just because it was right. "I know," Thomas replied softly, his tone steady as a rock. "That's exactly why he wants me to help you. Can you believe that? A reward, not for asking, but for acting selflessly. Isn't it incredible?" The silence between them stretched, not awkward, but full of unspoken gratitude. Jason could hear the distant roar of a plane taking off, the quiet hum of voices around them. But his own thoughts were louder than the world around him, until Thomas's voice sliced through it all, calm yet filled with understanding. "I know you missed your flight. I know you're supposed to be somewhere important today." Jason's stomach tightened. How could Thomas possibly know that? How could he understand the weight of this moment? The moment he was about to miss something so precious? With a small, bitter laugh, Jason shook his head. "Yeah, my son's awards ceremony. He's only 10. I promised I'd be there." His heart ached with the pull of that promise. He had made it with such certainty, such excitement, but now, it felt like a cruel twist of fate. Could he really let Aiden down? Could he? Thomas nodded, his eyes locking onto Jason's, unwavering, steady, like a rock. "Then let's make sure you are." Jason's mind froze. Wait, what? Did he hear that right? He frowned, unsure whether to believe what he was hearing. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice shaky, barely daring to hope. Thomas leaned forward slightly, his voice low but firm with the kind of quiet determination that made Jason's heart race. "I run operations for the airline, but more than that, I have access to resources, to planes." A plane? For him? Jason's mind spun as the words sank in, each one adding another layer of disbelief. "My father never wanted me to use them for him," Thomas continued, his gaze softening, "but today he asked me to use them for you." Jason's mind was a whirlwind. "You're saying, you can get me home today?" His voice was thick with disbelief. Could it really be true? Thomas nodded once, crisp and certain. "Not just home. Where exactly is the ceremony?" Jason hesitated, his heart pounding as he whispered, "It's at the high school stadium in Flagstaff. It starts soon." Too soon, and too far, would he make it? Thomas's lips curled into a reassuring smile. "Good. Then we'd better get moving." Jason felt his world tilt beneath him, his heart racing like a wild animal desperate to break free. I don't know what to say," he managed, his voice breaking with emotion. How could he thank them for something so beyond his wildest dreams? Thomas placed a steady hand on Jason's shoulder, grounding him like an anchor in a storm. "Then don't say anything. My father didn't ask for much in his life, but he asked me for this, and I want to honor that." Honor it? Jason could hardly believe it. This wasn't just about honoring a request, it was about something far more profound. It was a miracle unfolding right in front of him. Jason closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of the morning pressing down on him, but now, it felt different. It was softer, warmer, almost too big to hold, yet somehow, precious. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the resolve he needed. He nodded, his voice steadier now. "All right," he said, his words carrying a sense of finality, "let's do it. Let's make it happen." Thomas rose with purpose, motioning for Jason to follow him. They wove through the terminal, past tired travelers clutching coffee cups, past the coffee shops and magazine racks that blurred together. At the far end, they slipped through an unmarked door. Was it a staff entrance? Jason blinked in surprise, taking in the quiet efficiency of the workers around them, all in crisp uniforms, moving with practiced speed. On the other side, a sleek black town car waited, its engine purring softly, promising a journey that would change everything. The driver stepped out, opening the door with a smooth flick of his wrist, as if he already knew what this ride meant. Thomas turned to Jason, excitement lighting up his eyes. "This is just the first leg," he said. "We'll take the car straight to the private airfield. The plane's already waiting." Jason's disbelief deepened, and he let out a soft laugh, still unable to comprehend. A private plane? To Flagstaff? He couldn't wrap his mind around it. Was this even real? Thomas smiled, his confidence infecting Jason. "Not just to Flagstaff, right to that stadium, if the pilot can manage it. And I think he can." Jason exhaled sharply, awe flooding his senses. It felt like a scene out of a movie, too wild, too surreal. But as he climbed into the car's back seat, the soft leather cradling him, it didn't feel like a fantasy anymore, it felt like destiny. The car glided effortlessly away from the terminal, weaving through traffic with smooth precision. Jason sank back into his seat, the hum of the engine and the scent of leather wrapping around him like a blanket. Could this really be happening? As the car sped down a private access road, Jason's mind raced. He thought of Walter, his steady eyes, his quiet strength. He thought of Aiden, his little boy, and how his face would light up when he saw his dad. Suddenly, it didn't feel like a dream anymore, it felt like fate. The black car rolled to a stop at the tarmac, and Jason's gaze shot to the gleaming white jet waiting for him. The pilot, a calm man in his 40s named Carter, was already waiting to greet him. "This is yours for today," Thomas said simply, his voice filled with quiet pride. Jason stepped out into the cool autumn air, his senses overwhelmed. The jet gleamed in the sunlight, its polished surface shining like a beacon. Carter greeted him with a nod. "Mr. Miller, welcome aboard. Let's get you home." "Home." To Aiden. Jason stepped onto the plane, the luxury inside wrapping around him like a cocoon. But none of it mattered. All he could think of was Aiden, waiting for him, hoping he'd make it. Could he really pull this off? "Don't worry, Mr. Miller," Carter's calm voice crackled over the intercom. "We've done this before. Just sit back and relax." Jason chuckled, a shaky laugh escaping him. Could this really be true? The plane lifted into the sky, the world below blurring as they soared toward Flagstaff. Jason closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of it all, the promise, the miracle. He'd done the right thing, and someone had noticed. And now, he was going to keep his word to Aiden. Could anything feel more important? The world melted away, no engines, no crowd, just them, locked in a moment too perfect to break. Kindness, even a small spark, had lit this fire, didn't it always find a way? Jason glanced up, spotting Thomas at the field's edge, hands in pockets, a quiet smile on his face. Did he feel this too? A nod passed between them, a silent thank you deeper than words. Perfect. Right then, it clicked, the world's loud, messy, and full of excuses to look away. But sometimes, you don't. Sometimes, you see the old man struggling. Sometimes, you help. Because someone's always watching, and sometimes, they give back more than you ever dreamed, right? He set Aiden down, hands on his shoulders, feeling the life in him, his son. The stadium erupted, cheers, applause, laughter filling the warm air like music. Jason looked at Aiden, really saw him, and thought of Walter, Thomas, every tiny choice that built this moment, wasn't it worth it? He knew it then, clear as day, kindness never fades. Sometimes, it comes back in ways that matter most, doesn't it? He ruffled Aiden's hair, grinning softly, his boy. Come on, bud, he said, voice warm and full. Let's go celebrate. Together, they walked off the field, father and son, the jet glowing behind them like a vow kept. Beautiful, right? This story hit me like a warm hug on a chilly day. Oh, how it made my heart swell. It's a blazing reminder that kindness isn't just a fleeting gesture, it's a force that can reshape lives. Jason's choice to pause for Walter, despite his own urgency, fills me with awe and a fierce hope. In a world racing past the weary and overlooked, this screams, slow down. See people. Too often, society shoves the elderly, the struggling, into the shadows. Walter's initial invisibility stings because I've seen it too. But when Jason stopped, it wasn't just help, it was dignity restored, a ripple of compassion crashing through apathy. And the reward? A private jet to keep a promise? That's the universe winking at us, shouting, goodness echoes. It's not about grand heroics, it's the quiet, brave choice to care that ignites miracles. This story burns in me a longing for more empathy, a society that doesn't just rush by but lifts up. Jason's torn heart, between duty and his son, mirrors life's messy beauty, and oh, how it inspires me to choose kindness, trusting it'll find its way back, lighting up the dark in ways I can't predict. In the darkest times, kindness slips through, quiet and steady. Not every hero wants a spotlight, some just want to know someone's fed today. And sometimes, that's enough to shift a life. Amazing, huh? Forget this tale, and it's gone, unless someone tells it again. Subscribe to Heartfelt Gratitude Stories, where fairness shines, kindness lasts, and no quiet deed gets lost. Won't you join us?